All right, Jack Carr is the #1 New York Times best-selling author. He is the author of the Terminal List series. He is also a former Navy SEAL, and he's been digging into Israel and Hamas and the Middle East because he's researching a book that is coming out next year. And so I wanted to give him a chance to maybe share some of the things that he has learned to give us some perspective on why now, what does this mean? If Iran is involved, does that mean Russia is involved? What are we headed for? Welcome, Jack. How are you?
Oh, it's great to be here. How are you doing, sir?
I'm very good. I'm I'm not even an enlisted man, so I'm certainly not, sir. So, Jack, the Israel thought they were duped. They thought that Hamas had been tamed. Some they cared about, making money and taking care of their people. And Hamas did a really good job in reading some of the articles that are out now, did a really good job of duping them into this. But Iran seems to be involved, even though our president says there's no evidence of that. Is there any evidence? That makes total sense. And what does that mean?
Oh, yes. There's a lot to unpack here. But really, the Israel that Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran was dealing with last week, that's a different Israel than they're dealing with today, most certainly. And we talked about being duped into something. It was really a form of quasi-tolerance, meaning that Israel has tolerated a certain level of violence from Hamas. And they thought that they could contain Hamas. They could live with that certain level of violence. They thought Hamas was tolerable, containable in Gaza. Not today. That has all changed over the weekend. The levels of violence perpetrated on Israel is something that they have never seen before at these numbers: grandmothers, children, women killed, raped, tortured. And a friend in Israel who's with the Special Operations Forces over there has been texting me throughout the weekend and over the last couple of days here, and has said that what we're seeing in these videos that are coming out are not even the half of it. It is so much worse than what we're seeing, and they're in the thick of it right now.
So, you look at some of these things and you see that 900 Israelis died. Some of them were Americans. They died in horrific ways. It was an execution squad, really, and a kidnapping squad. As we watch these things, we have to understand the population is only 9 million people over in Israel. Mm-hmm. So that's like casualties of 30,000 people being tortured and raped and killed here in America. This is a huge impact. However, the way Israel usually deals with it, I think what people don't understand is that it has changed. Normally, they will go, and then as soon as they respond, then the world starts to say, oh, you've got to stop the killing. This is horrible. I don't think Israel's going to stop this time.
I don't think so either. And it's for the past decade, they've had the same sort of policies towards Gaza have remained in effect. It's been semi-working, but I think that they're going to look at those policies, realize those policies were a failure. All they did was set up Hamas to do what they did over the weekend. And, of course, there's a few wild cards in there as well. Hezbollah up in the north, there's something between 100,000 and 150,000 rockets pointed right at Israel. So if that was acceptable last week, I don't think that's going to be acceptable for much longer, because soon that becomes 200,000 rockets, 250,000 rockets, 300,000 rockets, eventually just buying time where there are enough forces to really do some damage in Israel. So I think things have shifted across the board, and Hamas will look at this as their most successful operation in history. And we think about Pyrrhic victories, what this has done. An opportunity is a horrible word to use here, but that's really what it is for Israel to hit Hamas so hard that it'll take them decades to recover. Now, I don't think you can eliminate them totally, as we saw in Iraq and Afghanistan over 20 years of trying it with different factions there in those two areas, but they can certainly set them back decades.
So this is really, if you look at some of the videos, they were beheading people, one with a garden hoe. This is the same kind of stuff that we had from ISIS. What is the difference between those two, if there is any, and where is the connection to Iran?
Well, the difference is where they came from. When we talk about tactics and terrorist tactics, really what that means is focusing on those soft civilian targets, not focusing on military targets. That's really what differentiates us from our enemy and why it's so important to maintain that moral high ground. But the question is, why now? Hamas and really by proxy, Iran and possibly Russia chose the time and the place of this engagement. So that's the question geopolitically. Why right now? And the question obviously is because Israel is so divided. They have some issues with their judicial and executive branch. And so they're divided probably like never before. U.S. very weak. The world, Hamas, Israel, Iran, Russia saw our withdrawal from Afghanistan, see the billions of dollars going to the Ukraine, see the division here, see our leader in the White House. So there's a lot on the table just with those things. And then we have this U.S., Israel, Saudi Arabia, just on the brink of essentially it's like a trilateral type of agreement that deals with oil, increasing production, decreasing price, and a defense pact. And what I think it really is, I mean, that's what it is on the surface, but I think what it really is, and I have no insider information here, is that it includes defense by nuclear weapons. So it would make, and possibly making Saudi Arabia the first nuclear power in the Middle East, aside from Israel, who doesn't talk about that sort of thing. Because on the other side, you have Iran, Russia, and China. And China is Iran's largest trading partner. 2 years ago, they signed a 25-year strategic partnership. So it is in China's interest and Russia's interest to have Iran as the dominant nuclear power in the region. So there's those are the two sides right there: U.S., Israel, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Russia, China. But I think what this does, what this Hamas incursion does really is just delays possibly this agreement. I think it's going to happen. It just delays it. We'll see by how long.
Where would they be getting the nuke?
From the United States. Yeah. So after I talked about this last night on a news hit, and someone sent me an article from the Times of Israel in which Netanyahu actually says that that's a possibility on the table. I didn't know that before, but so that it was kind of nice to see that last night after I came off the air. But really, nuclear supremacy in the Middle East is what's on the table here. So
we don't have a good relationship currently with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, or do we?
Oh, I think it is. You never know what they're looking from the outside. But what's practically and logically what's happening behind closed doors there is that U.S., Israel, Saudi Arabia are going to lead the way with this trilateral agreement to really change the face of the Middle East going forward. So that's on the table, and of course Iran doesn't want that. Of course Russia doesn't want that, and of course China doesn't want that because they're getting a lot of oil from Iran.
If Iran was behind this, is Russia behind this?
I think we can it's fairly safe to conclude that is a very strong possibility. And you can use Hamas, you can use Hezbollah, you can use these different proxy terrorist organizations and really manipulate them to get to what you want as a larger, more established power. So you almost I was going to say you almost feel sorry that they're being manipulated like that, but that's the way of the world.
So, Jack, as I've been thinking about this, I mean, Israel is one of our strongest allies, one of our best allies. They're the most like us in the Middle East, for sure, and the only ones that I think would fight on the right side. The other side is barbaric and evil, I think, and I hate to abandon Israel, but I also hate to get roped in to a war with Russia and Iran and possibly do the things they want us to do. Because I think, and you'd know better than I think they're doing to us what we did to the former Soviet Union. We're bankrupting them. We're dividing them from the inside. We're roping them into wars. And everybody knows we're on the brink of destruction here. What should we do to help the Israelis? Because I also feel strongly we need to help them.
Right, and I don't think those. And I agree with your assessment. But the division seems to be coming. They don't need to do too much to divide us. A little prod here, a little comment there, but we're doing a pretty good of dividing ourselves and destroying ourselves from the inside, which is absolutely heartbreaking. So we obviously Bretton Accords at the end of World War II. We surprised the world by saying we were going to essentially defend trade routes around the world. That was going to be a benefit for all countries coming out of the Second World War. And we just moved a carrier battle group into the Med to send a very strong issue to Iran. So while our administration says that there's no evidence linking Iran to these attacks, we did move a carrier battle group into the Med to send a pretty clear message to Iran and in support of Israel. So that's something right there. But we do move carrier battle groups around the world quite frequently, obviously, from the end of World War II up to today. It's our major way we project our strength and really keep the world safe and protect trade. And it's worked up to this point. But now we're kind of retreating from that. We don't have as many ships as we used to have. China is obviously building up their Navy. So things are shifting geopolitically in the world and as far as the military powers go. No doubt about that. How long will it take? Not exactly sure, but there is a shift going on right now. So what else can we do to support Israel? I'm not sure they're going to need too much from us, meaning we put a carrier battle group right there. If things do escalate and Hezbollah does more in the north and something spills over into Iran, then perhaps. But gloves are off right now. Israel restraint is out the window. They've restrained themselves over the last at least decade towards Hamas, even towards Hezbollah. That restraint is now completely out the window. And Hamas really has thought, and other terrorist groups, insurgent groups, thought of Israel as an occupying nation, a colonial nation, for lack of a better term. And they looked to the past. They looked to the French in Algeria. They looked to the British in Kenya or India. But the difference is, and for some reason Hamas and other groups don't recognize this, the French had France to go back to. The British had Britain to go back to. Israel doesn't have anywhere to go. They're going to stand and fight. They have no other choice. In fact, their President Herzog, as he addressed the nation in the wake of the attacks, he concluded his remarks with something along the lines of, this time too, the state of Israel will win. We have no other choice.
So the White House, we're talking to Jack Carr, said the president will struggle to help Israel replenish stockpiles of weapons and ammunition as it gears up for full-scale war against the Iranian-backed terrorists in the region. Congressional official told the Wall Street Journal that they expect Israel to request advanced U.S.-produced GBU-39 small-diameter bombs, small arms, ammunition, and 122-millimeter tank rounds, mortars, and more. The official said being able to supply Israel with enough Tamir interceptors to replenish their Iron Dome was most worrisome and the biggest problem the administration will face. How prepared are we? Or are we just giving everything away?
Yeah, that's a great question, and one that our enemies are certainly asking and certainly watching. They're seeing untold billions go to Ukraine, along with arms and other places around the world, of course, as well, which begs the question, well, how able are we to defend ourselves in a one-front war, a two-front war, a three-front? And the answer to that, if you're looking from the outside, is that we're probably not as prepared as we were a decade ago, 2 decades ago, even 3, when we really drew down at the end of the Cold War. So the other side of this, though, is that we have experience at the tactical level. We've proven at the strategic level not to be so adept with senior level military leaders, politicians, even bureaucrats. But at the tactical level, we have the most experienced force that we've ever had, because that tactical level, those E2s, E3s, E4s, E5s, E6s, E7s, those officers that are now majors and lieutenant colonels, they were once brand new officers in 01, 02, 03, fighting in Iraq, fighting in Afghanistan, and they're coming up the ranks. They don't have as much to work with, but they have experience. So that's what we have, and that's something that we need to capitalize on. But experience without some of those tools, it makes things a little more difficult. So it is certainly something that we need to be aware of, that the next administration needs to be aware of. And if you want to capitalize on this experience, not let it go to waste, if you want to turn those lessons that we learned over the last 20 years into wisdom going forward, well, now we need to equip those soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines that have that experience, that sacrifice so much, with the tools they need to defend the nation.
Jack Carr, thank you so much. When's your new book come out?
Well, next May it's on the books right now, but my first nonfiction, which actually has a Hezbollah connection, but it's called Targeted. It's my first nonfiction, 1983 Marine barracks bombing.
Wow.
Is coming out next fall. So 2 books in the works for 2024.
Great. Thank you, Jack. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much. Take care.
You bet. Jack Carr.